Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Parent Pod. This week, we're going to be joined by local mom, Rebecca, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about homeschooling and classical conversations. Just a little background on this program. We are bringing you and connecting you to resources, education, parents, family-friendly businesses, all kinds of things in our community, because it's our belief that if we are proactively strengthening our community from the beginning, then we have a healthier community. So it's our goal to reach out to everybody and find a little bit of something that we all can need right now. So this hour's for you. I'm glad you're joining us tonight. I hope you have an hour free from the kids. We don't have a special cocktail tonight, but if you are joining us and you made the blueberry cocktail, the blueberry lemonade, one of my favorites. Next week, the pickle jar will be back and highlighting with us. We've got a really exciting night. Not only are we going to talk to Rebecca tonight, but we're also going to be sharing some fun stories, awarding some prizes, and all kinds of other things. We've been taking your questions and your anonymous stories all week, and you can continue to submit them for upcoming shows coming up. With that being said, we did get a couple questions for Rebecca. We're going to ask them tonight. And if you're joining us, you can submit your questions in the chat, and we'll get Rebecca to answer them. And I know homeschooling, right now, I want everybody to remember, like, homeschool, virtual, it's a mess, right? And we're going to talk about that with Rebecca. It's a lot. It's a lot. And no matter what you're considering, whatever choice you make, know it's the right choice for you. And that's awesome, because it's a really tough choice to make, and it's a really hard decision. But remember, everybody's choice is going to be the right choice. It's what works for your family. So that being said, I know there's a lot of conversation about homeschooling and how that looks, how it's different from virtual. So we're going to gear most of the show tonight towards this important topic because it's such a big one. So I'm going to bring Rebecca on now. I'm going to learn a little bit more about her. And here she is. Hi, Rebecca. How are you?
Hey, Amy. I'm good. Thanks. How are you?
I'm good. It's nice to meet you virtually.
Nice to meet you too.
I heard some nice things about you after you were recommended, after you had reached out from a couple other moms that I know. And I was very impressed because they sung your praises. So
Thank you.
it was really nice to hear. So before we kind of dive into it, tell us about you. Tell us a little bit about you, your family, all that kind of stuff.
So, a little bit about me. So I am a mom. I have 4 children. My oldest actually just turned 14 last week. Yeah, how did that happen? I don't know. Like, it's crazy. So he's actually starting his first year of high school this year. And then my next son is 11, Noah. He loves baseball and all things Avengers. Then I have a 6-year-old daughter, Eliana, and she is very type A. She actually makes schedules before she goes to bed at night for the next day. I can kind of see where she got it a little bit from me, but she like takes it to another level. Like she's seriously type A. And then my baby is 3, 3.5, Lydia. And so that's my kids. My husband's name is Jonathan. He actually works from home. He does IT for 7-Eleven. So he's actually been working from home for the past 3 or 4 years, which has been really nice. So this whole pandemic thing, like not a whole lot changed for him as far as work goes, which was really, really a blessing. I know that a lot of people were not as fortunate, to go into that type of situation, but he was already working from home. And actually we have been homeschooling for, this will be our 10th year of homeschooling.
Wow, 10 years.
I know. I'm not that old, really. I'm not. So I am certainly not an expert on homeschooling by any stretch of the imagination. But I've done it for a long time. So, and I am still learning every day. And there's constantly adjustments depending on the kids' ages and needs. So it has looked a lot different for us over the years. But I've grown for sure. I've learned a lot. And then the other thing I do is that I teach piano lessons to like beginner, intermediate learners.
Amazing.
So that is the job I get paid for, I say. All the other jobs I do, I don't get paid for.
Well, you get paid in a sense. It's just the return is in snuggles and hugs, and then hopefully someday a blessed life full of many more blessings, right?
Absolutely. Yes, treasures in heaven, eternal rewards,
That's
and
right.
which are far greater than any monetary value, for sure.
That's right. So homeschooling, it's a big topic right now, obviously. A lot of parents concerned with what's going to go on with the public schools or the decisions that the public schools have made. And, you heard me in the beginning, every family's got to make their own choice here. And there is no wrong choice because everybody's trying to do the best they can with the information we're being given.
Absolutely.
And we're all different. And we have to respect the choices. So I thought it was really important to bring on, now I've never homeschooled. I taught for several years. I've been out of the teaching game for a long time, since before having kids. But even remote learning was a challenge for me as a former teacher. Just balancing the work life.
Yes.
And so, I've entertained homeschooling, but these questions come up, and I think we should kind of start with, it's a big thing, and how is it different? Because there is a difference between remote and virtual and homeschooling.
Yes, there absolutely is. Again, I am not an expert and I don't have like the final word on everything. But from what I understand, like virtual learning is one of the options being presented by the school system. And so you're basically doing the school's program just virtually. Is that your understanding of that?
That's my understanding. They are doing the curriculum, and they're giving you all the tools to do it, or administer it, if you will. Yes,
absolutely. Yeah. That was my understanding of it as well. Homeschooling is definitely different. Homeschooling is basically, when you're homeschooling, you are in the driver's seat. So you are coming up with your child's education plan. You are the one that determines, what methods you're going to use. You're the one that's in control of all that. Whereas if you're doing a school, like a remote learning, you just do what the school does. So those two are very, very different. And I wanted to say too, that virtual learning can definitely be a part of your homeschool. Depending on your needs, depending on what courses you want your child to do, maybe virtually online. One of my sons does math online. And that's just how he does his math program. It's not the entirety of it, but he does do some of it online. So, but that can also be part of homeschooling. Like, you don't have to be completely in a virtual school in order to do some of your courses through online. I don't know if I hope that helps clear some of that up.
There's a lot of flexibility within homeschooling. You're in the driver's seat, but you have more flexibility with how to administer it. Whereas kids, for example, in public school, they're held to a different standard in terms of their standardized tests. They have to grade it by a certain way. And in homeschooling, it would be, you could choose to do a portfolio. You could choose to have your child they could write a symphony about underwater sea life and a whole science unit, and they could incorporate piano into it if they knew how to do piano. And it could incorporate, you have a lot more, you can draw in a lot more creativity with it.
Yes. Yep.
And you choose is more flexible for parents who might be working remotely.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. There is definitely that flexibility. Homeschooling is not a one size fits all. There is so much opportunity for you to be you, and you have to choose what is going to work for you, for your personality. Some people might like a more structured program. Some people might like a more laid back program. It's whatever you think you are going to be able to do, and that you can find life in, because if it's boring for you, it's going to be boring for your kids. And the other thing that's nice about it is that you can also tailor make it to the needs and interest of your child.
Right.
So if you have a kid who's like super into math and science, you can really like just cut them loose on the exploring the different, whatever they're really interested in those topics. I have one of my sons has ADHD, and so I have been able to kind of like tailor his education to his needs, his attention span, his learning style. You have that ability as a parent to be able to administer whatever plan you want them to do.
You bring up something like with special needs, and again, you have the ability to build in the movement breaks. He doesn't have to just sit a 6 straight hours or have this regimented schedule, although some kids do better with that. And again,
exactly.
That's okay. But you have the flexibility, and maybe if they're having a bad day, you know what? Okay, let's regroup. Let's change to this lesson, and maybe this will get your interest, and we'll come back to this one tomorrow. You have a little more flexibility, and it's such a great opportunity. Where do people, before we get into some of the other questions that we've gotten, where do you kind of start? So let's say someone in Sandwich right now, hypothetically, is looking to homeschool. What are the steps they need to take in terms of finding a curriculum? How do you find that curriculum? And then how do you move from there?
I think the first thing that you really need to start with is just having an honest conversation with yourself and just asking yourself, like, why am I doing this? Why do I want to do this? You're going to need to come back to that because there are days that you need to remember why you're doing it.
Maybe write it down somewhere. Put it in a picture frame above your desk and say, okay, that's right.
Yes, absolutely. And there's actually this Facebook meme that I really love. It just cracks me up every time. It's what I thought homeschooling would look like, and it's a picture of Mary Poppins. And then what homeschooling actually is like, and it's Chris Pratt taming the velociraptors in Jurassic World.
Yes.
And it's not necessarily always the velociraptors, but sometimes it is, and sometimes it's Mary Poppins or Julie Andrews. The Hills Are Alive with the Sound of Music. You have those days, and then you have days where you have to remember, like, why did I decide to do this? And if it's as simple as I believe that this is what's best for my kids right now, that's good enough. That is good enough, because you're going to come back to it and be like, no, we had a hard day, but that's not going to derail the rest of our week.
Keep the end goal in sight.
Exactly. So I think that's the thing, just having, lock yourself in the bathroom with your favorite beverage and takes like 15 minutes to just think and write down your goals, and kind of why you're doing it so that you can come back to it.
I like that. That's an important first step.
It is an important first step, just for you personally, if you are going to make the decision to do this, because it is amazing and wonderful, but I'm not going to lie, it can be really hard sometimes. But again, like I'm still doing it after 10 years because I believe that what we gain from it is worth some of the difficulty of it. So that's the first thing. The second thing would be, kind of deciding what is your style. Like, what is your personality? Are you someone who likes everything laid out for you? Do you like a script to be able to, tell your kids, okay, first we do this, then we do this. And sometimes that's helpful if either it's your first time doing it, or, you're not super confident in your ability to explain things. I kind of like all laid out lesson plans personally. I can adapt them as needed for my kids. But I do like having it all there. Some people like the creativity of like, oh, let's study ocean animals this week. And then we go and find, put together different things from an ocean animals like a unit study kind of thing.
That would be my style.
Yeah.
Because I would like a theme and all the math and the science and the reading the geography, I like everything, art, everything to center around it. And that's how I used to teach back in the day. I like that
The
style.
unit studies, yeah, those are great. And there are curriculums that are laid out just like that. So kind of just deciding, okay, well, what's my style? Secondly, what's my kids' learning style? You know, are they kinesthetic learners? Do they need to jump around and move? Do they like hands-on? Do they learn better visually? And just with that knowledge in mind, then start to kind of look into what curriculum you might want to choose. There is so much out there. Don't get overwhelmed. Um, a really good place to start, though, actually, is I I actually had the privilege of being part of a panel of homeschool moms about a month and a half ago, and we did like a Zoom discussion panel on all the different types of homeschooling.
Okay.
So if you go on Facebook and you join the group called Intro to Homeschool, you can find that video. It's in that group, and the video is 4 hours long, and I was actually spoke a little bit towards the end of it. But in that video, we had moms, just amazing moms from all over the South Shore, talking about their different styles of homeschool. So there's Montessori, there's Waldorf, there's eclectic, Charlotte Mason. We talked a little bit about classical education. But if you're not sure, like, what is my style, that would be a good resource for you to just hear a little bit about each style and maybe decide what what approach you want to take with your homeschool. I'm going to tell you, I learned so much from these moms, like Montessori. I didn't know much about Montessori, but I really learned a lot. And there might be one that resonates with you if you can look into that. Another good thing, because it was so long, the admin actually wrote down like the time stamps for each style. So if there's one or two that you're particularly interested in, you can just listen to that segment, so you don't have to watch the whole 4 hour thing. But it was really interesting and a really good resource.
Right.
But like I said, there's a lot out there, and don't get overwhelmed. Even if you just want to like grab a couple workbooks, like your child's grade level, like Evan Moore, order from Amazon, and just start from there. That's great. Can give you a good launching point until you get a little bit more into it. And it's not like you have to have, beginning of the school year to the end of school year all planned out. Like you can, have a general idea of where you're going, and then just take it, week by week. So don't stress over having to have everything 100% like perfectly laid out. It's
For the
not.
beginning of the school year, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that kind of, someone actually just submitted a question, and you're not going to be able to see this, but from Garth, thanks for hosting. We are about to turn in our ed plan for our 3 girls homeschool year. And the form, the FSD form, offers assessment via progress reports in June and January. My research about the law and potential overreach by school districts is that we have to turn in 1 annual report. We want to maintain good relations with the districts, but not feed overreach. So what is actually, because I see that question a lot, and just because you've kind of talked a little bit about curriculum, and you know, you don't have to get your feet too wet immediately, but if they're submitting these forms, how do they kind of, with the assessment piece, leave that kind of open?
Simple is good. You do not have to get really fancy. I actually, this morning, I was looking at the AHEM website, and they give like sample progress reports, and it's always very simple. Like list the subject, list skills progressing, and that's good enough. As far as I believe that you are only required to submit 1 at the end of the year. I've lived in 3 towns in the last 2 or 3 years, and each town has only required that 1. But again, every town is a little bit different in what they're asking for. But I think as far as the laws go, I would look on that website. I can't even remember what the acronym stands for right now, but I know if it's AHEM, if you look on that website, that will tell you exactly what the laws are.
Okay.
That's all I can tell you, pretty much.
All right. We were talking a little bit about curriculums, and Colleen Medeiros would like to know, could you describe a curriculum you found works well for you over the years? You kind of talked about finding one that, like you said, everybody's going to be different. Her kids are kindergarten and second, and reading is her biggest concern for both of them currently. And she's also wondering, and we can transition into this after, we're going to get into a little bit about getting together with other like-minded homeschoolers, and we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So, describe a curriculum that has worked well for me.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's so many different ones out there. There's what I personally use is a Christian homeschooling program, BJU Press. I really liked their materials. They're very traditional. They kind of apply. They're easy to use for every different learning style. So my oldest son is a very visual learner. It worked great for him. My second son is like a mover and a hands-on learner. It worked really well for him. My daughter I haven't quite figured her out yet, but so far it's worked really well for him. I love their phonics program. They actually introduce all the vowels as like characters. So they get to, it's so cute. Like Mr. and Mrs. Short are always together. Miss Long, the long vowels, has her dog, marker E. It's like a little whole story thing. It's wicked cute and simple. So that has worked really well for all three of my kids that I've schooled so far. And yeah, they all different styles of learning. I have really liked that. I just saw a message pop up, Explode the Code. Yep. I've heard that's another really, really good one for teaching phonics. So those are the only ones that I've used. I actually have used Writing Road to Reading. The school that I was trained to teach in used that one. And I know that has worked well too, but there's a whole bunch of different ones out there. Obviously, I'm sure you're aware of. And then what was the second question? My brain.
Well, because reading's her biggest concern. I'm gonna come back to her second part about getting together for the socialization, because I want to segue there properly. Okay,
sure.
So I'm gonna come back to that in a second. Let's talk about homeschooling multiple ages. So for those of you, Garth, you've got 3. Colleen, you've got 2. You've both commented, and other people out there, I'm sure, have more than one. Most people do have 1 or more. So how? I mean, you've been doing it 10 years. How do you do that and balance that? And
it's called being a really good juggler, like having multiple balls going at the same time. Occasionally 1 or 2 comes crashing down, and it's okay. It's not the end of the world. But you think about like back to the founding of our country and how they had one-room schoolhouses. And I would say it's pretty safe to say, like, our founders, you read through the founding documents and like, wow, these people were very, very well educated. So, the one-room schoolhouse model where you've got kids of different age levels working on different things. And sometimes you all work on the same thing. So I would say,
that's interesting that you say that, because that would make sense. You can have there's a lot of benefits to it. You could have kids helping the other kids.
Oh, yes.
You could all be working on the same thing, but at different varying levels of output of performance or difficulty, if you will.
Exactly.
But also working together to make a finished product even. So I can see that really being beneficial, but also taking a lot of organization.
It does help to be organized and to have a plan. I call it like a very a very fluid plan, because sometimes it doesn't always go how you plan or think it's going to go, but just kind of like a general structure, the way that we'll structure our day. So we'll start I know this kind of gets into like what does a day look like, but I think it goes hand in hand with how do you do multiple age groups. So we'll start our morning together, and we'll do like Bible. We'll usually work on something we're working on memorizing together. And then we'll kind of split off. I usually give my older son, let me back up. My oldest son is very primarily independent at this point, so he knows what he's doing, and I just pop in and check in with him. But my 11-year-old, he still needs a lot of oversight, but I'm working on getting him to be more independent. So I'll give him a list of things that he can work on independently while I work with his younger sister. And we'll do like the things that I need to really work on with her to give him a chance to do some independent work. And then I flip flop and I give Ellie something to work on while I'm, working on something with Noah. And then we usually take a snack break somewhere in there. If my kids had their way, it would be like continual snack breaks, but we try to have one snack break. And then I usually try to save like the more difficult subjects for after snack break, just a word to the wise. Obviously,
children. Power, right? You got to energize the brain.
And they're much happier. Like my son, math is like akin to torture to him, but you got to learn math. So we do math after snack because it's his best chance of being as happy as he possibly can be. And then we'll take a lunch break. And then usually after lunch is when we come back together. And usually like history and science, I will teach everyone at the same time. Again, with the exception of my older son, who at this point is kind of doing his own thing. But we'll, read something or, study something together. And then my 6-year-old and my 11-year-old will just kind of, do the work at whatever level they can do that. And it's been working really, really well. So some together and some separate, some individual. And it seems to be like a good balance of working that out.
And so with that typical homeschool day, you also have the flexibility to go out into the community or into nature and use, if you're studying in science, the tidal flats, you could take a day trip or an afternoon trip to the Brewster tidal flats. So
absolutely. Yep. I do want to say though, COVID pandemic homeschooling is really different from like normal homeschooling, because normally we're at the library once a week. We're out doing field trips, we're out taking hikes, and we're at museums. And, we're seeing friends. We're, having like playground meetups and it is different in these times, trying to make that like social connection happen. Also, not having available to us the things that we normally would, as far as like places to go and things like that. So it is different, but under normal circumstances, we would be out taking field trips and, meeting up with friends and stuff.
And there's still opportunities within it to do it at a safer level. You could go by yourselves. And I know some of the homeschooling families are forming smaller pods. To do those, so you have that built in, which kind of brings us to this next type of thing is, pre-COVID might look different now, obviously. But how do you recommend homeschoolers, and what have you found works for getting this social aspect in as part of the routine?
Well, we have in the past, we've joined up with like playground meetups. The Facebook groups are a really good way to get connected. I know the Homeschool Cape Cod, the Facebook page. There's one in Plymouth Homeschoolers that my friend administrates. And then there's PACE, which is one for Christian families. So those are a good way to meet people, to get connected, to find out like who's on there that has kids your age that you might want to connect with. Sometimes on there, someone will throw out, hey, I'm meeting at such and such a place today. Who wants to join? And I know that a lot of really awesome friendships have come up that way. There's also a lot of different opportunities as far as classes being offered, music classes, art classes. And so a lot of my friends have offered these classes, and my kids have taken part of them in the past and met other families and other kids through that. So there's plenty of opportunity for that, to connect with other homeschoolers.
That's a good thing, because I think sometimes a misconception is they don't get a lot of socialization. That's not true at all.
Yeah.
A lot of times they're getting more because it's built within their days or within these activities that they're doing for extension of music, art, field trips. So I think that's
baseball,
important.
Playing
important to know.
Sports, all that stuff.
So let's talk a little bit about working while homeschooling. And tell us, I would imagine, and I haven't been there, but I would imagine, let's say I decided to homeschool, and I mean, I have a regular, more 9 to 5 type position. I have to be available. I've been able to convert some to virtual, and it's taken a lot of discipline, having to get up at 4 and work 4 to 8:30 in the morning remotely, then be with the kids, and then get back on at night. But I tell you, to sustain that for me, it has been very difficult. But I could imagine that there could be some flexibility while working, because again, you're not built into this traditional school day. It would be easier to build it into the time frame of the traditional school day, but certainly working parents could find a way to be flexible about it, because it is flexible.
Yeah, I definitely think, thinking outside the box a little bit. And I've been very fortunate that with my piano lessons, I can schedule them around my homeschooling. And that has been really, really a blessing for me to be able to do that, to still have an income and still homeschool my kids. I don't really necessarily have an answer for, someone who has to go into the office 9 to 5, or, to try to juggle both. Just as far, but be okay with thinking outside the box. Maybe dad
has on the weekends. I mean, they are not work on the weekends. They could work during the week, but they could, maybe it's a Thursday night through Sunday, they do a long weekend, and that the homeschool curriculum could be built into
absolutely. Or, dad could do some of it. I know my cousin's family who homeschools, the dad does math at night when he's home. And so that's how they do it. Another thing I wanted to throw out there is, so my baby sister, Christina, she is actually a senior in high school at this point. So there's quite an age gap between us. But she's actually just 3 years older than my oldest son. So there was a point in time where my mother was going back to nursing school, and during the day, and then she was working. So, and my baby sister was homeschooled up through 8th grade. So what we ended up doing was I took on the homeschooling of my sister for a few, my favorite subjects, history and English. And then we would kind of swap. So while I worked, my mom would teach my son science and math. And that was kind of a neat trade-off, so that, we were only responsible for those subjects, but I had both kids on the days that she was at school and working, and then she had both kids the day that I was working. So that's kind of something you could think about too, as far as, sharing it with a friend or family member. It doesn't have to be all the time doing everything.
That's a really, really good point to bring up, that you can utilize resources within your community or your family, your network, And I liked how you pointed out the subjects you liked.
Yeah. Yeah, math and science are not my favorite, so I was happy to let my mom take over those for a little bit. I've learned to like them, and actually, through doing school with my kids, I have learned to really love science. Like it's been the way that they are learning science is so much more fun than how I learn science.
Right?
So yeah, but yeah, I was able to take the subjects that I'm especially passionate about and share that with my sister, which was really cool.
Excellent, excellent. So, talk to us a little bit about some of the. I know we have some resources. The libraries, a lot of the libraries, Cindy has said they have books and kits databases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The majority of our libraries have a ton of resources, and I know they're kind of limited on their hours right now, but I'm pretty sure you can call a lot of them and put something aside for pickup if this is what you're thinking of doing. And there's additional groups like Rebecca has mentioned already. So let's talk a little bit about classical education and classical conversations.
So, so classical, I started off as more of a traditional educator, like textbooks and stuff, because that's my style. I like books. I like pens and paper. Not super crafty, not super creative. That's just me. I have friends that do like poetry tea time with scones, and my kids get goldfish and maybe sometimes hot chocolate if it's a good day. But that's more of my like how I started off as more of a like traditional model. But a couple years ago, I started. There were several friends of mine that were starting a classical community on Cape. So I started learning a lot more about classical education, and the more I learned about it, the more I really fell in love with it. So basically, the classical method of education is all about teaching the tools of learning to children, and there's really three stages of learning that are based on like a child's developmental stage. So the first stage is the grammar stage, which is focused a lot on like memorizing facts, information, vocabulary, and that's what that stage is focused on. And it's primarily for like younger children. Have you ever noticed how like they can remember if something is in the words to a song, they know it like that.
Or a movie.
Absolutely. Yeah, they love to parrot. They love to repeat. They are all about the facts. They might not know what all those words mean, and depending on the song, that might be a good thing.
Yep.
But they are really, really good at memorization. So that's what the younger years are focused on. And then the second stage is the dialectic stage, where your like preteens and young teenagers are starting to get to the point where they love to argue, for better or for worse.
Teenagers, I thought that was at 3-4 years old.
Yeah, that too. But it gets a little more. It gets a little more interesting when they get a little bit older. But the dialectic stage is really teaching them how to argue appropriately, and taking the facts that they have learned in their grammar stage and now starting to use them to connect them, whereas they may have studied, like they may know historical dates. Now in the dialectic, they're starting to connect those dates with things that happen or things that they're reading in their literature, the geography that they're studying. So it's kind of like making that next stage of connections. And then the last stage is the rhetoric, where they really kind of hit that sweet spot of like expression and leadership, which is really what we're looking for more in the high school years, where you want your child to be able to have an intelligent conversation, to be able to take some leadership of different things, and to really express. It's kind of like where you let them take over and express all those good things that have been put into them. So that's just kind of like classical education in a nutshell, like what the classical model is. So classical conversations is a program that was really built around the classical model. And fun fact, it was actually created by a literal rocket scientist. Her name is Lee Bortons, and she created it in the 90s. And I think that's really interesting because it was not created by an educator. It was someone who was a scientist who created this program. But so the Classical Conversations program, it follows the classical model. It is Christian based. So everything, like the whole curriculum is all based on the Bible. And it's community, which is, for me, I think that's the part I love about it the most, is that you're kind of joining with other families in educating your children. So what it looks like is we meet together one day a week. And then the kids meet with tutors who are trained in the program. The Foundations program is for ages 4 through 11. And in the Foundations program, because those kids are in the grammar stage, they do a lot of memorizing. Okay. They memorize like a timeline of world history. They memorize math facts, like skip counting, history facts, geography, locations. They do a lot. It's primarily focused on memorization. And then the second program is the Essentials, which they meet in the afternoon. So Foundations meets in the morning. The Essentials program is for ages 9 to 11. Okay. And they meet in the afternoon, and basically they focus on like breaking down the entire English language. It's a really, really cool program, especially if you're kind of nerdy and you like diagramming. But it's good for everyone to learn.
Diagramming? Oh my gosh, I'm actually excited that you just I mean, I go back to my old Catholic school junior high education, and I can remember Mrs. Joyle teaching me how to diagram. And to this day, I can diagram a sentence. I know all parts of it. And, I didn't think it was useful at the time, but as I've used it, because in writing you're thinking about the structure of a sentence.
Absolutely.
And does that sentence I just wrote have all the parts it needs to have in it? And it's a crazy thing, because you did not, when you were back there then, you were like, really? Diagram is
why am I doing this? Yeah, yep. But it helps them to be able to put things in logical order and in logical place. And to be better writers. So they do a lot of that. It's like a really intense look at all the parts of the English language. They do math games where they like work with equations. And then they do a writing segment, which we use Institute for Excellence in Writing. Awesome, awesome program. I highly recommend to anyone and everyone to teach your kids how to write. The guy's name who does it is Andrew Pudawa.
Oh, wow.
It's an amazing, amazing program. I wish I learned to write that way. It makes it really easy and painless. And my son, who is in school's not his favorite thing, he loves IEW. I can get him to sit down and do his writing like no problem.
Really?
Because it's fun. Yeah. Yep.
I like it.
He bitches and moans about math, but you give him something to write and he's totally fine. So that's the Essentials program, and they actually do the same thing 3 years in a row, which is a really amazing structure, because like the first year they're kind of just getting some of it. The second year they see all of it, but they retain some of it. The second year they gain more mastery, and then by the third year they have a really good grasp of the material. So it's really a neat way to do it. And I've seen my son grow. This will be his third year in Essentials. And I've seen him each year. He does more and more and exceeds my expectations. So that's the Essentials program. And then the Challenge program is for up through high school. So Challenge A and B would be kind of like junior high. And then Challenge 1 through 4 is for high schoolers. So I am the director of the Essentials and Foundations class program on Cape. Our program right now is actually like full to the brim. it's mostly limited by our location. But we really would like to get a second community started on Cape. So if anybody is out there is interested in classical education, or interested in maybe looking into like directing a second community, definitely reach out, because it's a really, really wonderful program. For me, having multiple kids in multiple age levels, it was really a lifesaver. It helped me kind of pull everything all together, so that we're going to the same place on the same day. They get that opportunity to be with their friends, have that community, and then we are home working the other 4 days, or out doing field trips, or out at the library, or whatever.
That seems like a really useful tool, especially for people just starting out, to be able
Yeah.
to lean on that. So
Yeah,
kind of the
absolutely.
takeaways I'm getting from you, Rebecca, is that the key takeaways are you got to make your decision and find out. The first thing to do is set a goal, and find out what kind of learner your kid is and what kind of teacher you are going to be. And then be really honest with yourself. Can I commit to this? Why am I doing this? And to know that there's flexibility in it, because it's not one size fits all, and there is a lot more flexibility. And if your goal is this is what your children need right now, then you can find a way to make that work. And there are many resources out there.
Yeah.
As you've kind of told us, and you've hit on a lot of them tonight, out there for the community to take advantage of.
Yeah. And the other thing I want to stress is that you can do this. If you want to do this, you can. You don't have to have a master's in education. You don't have to be Mother Teresa. You can do this. You are your child's first teacher. And you are capable of educating them. I firmly believe that. So I just want to encourage anyone who's considering this, like, you can do this. You can.
100%. 100%. You know, we're stronger than we all think. And as parents, we got thrust into a world with no handbook. And you know what? We've kept these kids alive. We're alive. We're happy. We're healthy. And you know what? You can do it. And this is just a phase. You know, it's just like when you have a new baby.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You have to remember, and as they grow, this is just a phase. And then the next phase comes, and you're like, it's just a phase. And we talked about with Laura last week, it might last a couple hours, it might last a day, it might last a couple months.
Yeah.
And, you know, during COVID, if this is what's going to be your push into homeschooling, that's great, you know. And remember, it's just a phase, and you can do it, and you don't have to be overwhelmed. There's a lot of resources out there. Colleen says, thank you so much for the encouragement.
Oh, you're welcome.
You guys can do this. I mean, we're moms and dads. I mean, seriously. There's no other job on the planet. There really isn't. I mean, really, the mental, the verbal, the physical, everything you have to go through. I mean, trust me, we can do this. Like you said, we're the first teacher. We're the best teacher. And that's really what it comes down to. Colleen wants to know, have you used Matthew C? I've heard good things.
I have heard good things as well. I have not used it, but I know I have a lot of good friends, homeschooling moms, who have used it and loved it. I think that the difference in the approaches is that Matthew C is more of a like concentrated unit study. So like one unit you will study all fractions and like immerse yourself in fractions, and then the next one you're doing all multiplication. I like BJU because it's more of like a spiral approach. So they do a little bit of one thing and then they kind of circle around back to it again and go a little deeper and then do something else. So I personally like that approach, but I have heard really good things about Matthew C as well.
Brooke wants to know, are there options for parents who know they don't want to homeschool, but also don't want their kids to go to public school? So Brooke, you may have missed the beginning. So we talked a little bit about the difference with public school. They're offering the virtual option, which is where the school is designing the curriculum for your children to follow, and you follow it. And homeschooling, you're in the driver's seat. So if But like Rebecca said earlier, you could utilize the school's curriculum, like ST Math, for example, and things like that to amplify your homeschooling curriculum. Correct?
I believe so. Yeah. I mean, you can really do what you want as far as that goes, I think. Use whatever.
And maybe some of the other options are teaming up with other families or other parents. Rebecca brought up a good point earlier, which you may have missed, Brooke, and she talked about how she worked with her mother, with her sister, because and they traded off doing the subjects that they wanted. So maybe you don't want to homeschool for certain subjects, but you can team up with someone and offset each other. So it's not as big of a burden, if you will. You're teaching where you're more comfortable.
Actually, I just thought of another thing. I actually learned about it on the homeschooling panel I was a part of. If you go to that intro to homeschool group and look at that video, there's one and I forget, it was like distance learning or something like that, and one mom talked about it where she enrolled her kids in a virtual school, but it wasn't through the public school system.
Okay.
That was one option. I'm gonna try to. I can't remember what it is right now. It's not coming to my head. But that is one of the options too. It's on that video in the intro to homeschool.
Garth says we're going to use Math in Focus from Singapore, and we purchased Dreambox as an online supplement, and the girls already love it. Do you know anything about that one, Rebecca?
I don't. I have not. Singapore actually. It does.
That's what matters, right? If they're learning and they're happy.
If you can get your kids to love math, like, that's amazing. So keep doing it. Oh, Tekka, that's it. That's what it is, Tekka.
Tekka, yeah.
Yes, that's the one. One of the moms on the panel talked about Tekka. Yep. That's what it is. Thank you.
They're fully online public schools in Massachusetts. It doesn't require you to withdraw from public schools. So this kind of goes back to Brooke's question. So maybe she doesn't want to homeschool, but like you said, there's options for this online virtual school where you've withdrawn them to homeschool, but they're following, you've picked a curriculum that someone else is administering. So there is that option, correct, too, where you could buy into these programs and they design a curriculum. And so again, there's options here. I like that there's options. Options are important.
Yep.
I'm really glad you joined us tonight, Rebecca. I really am. And
thank you for having me.
I'm excited because I think people, there's a lot of questions about it. And people who may not be as familiar with it, and it's a newer thing, even though it's gaining more and more traction, especially here on the Cape. I've noticed it's grown so much in the past few years. And we have a beautiful community to take advantage of something like that.
Absolutely.
Not that our public schools aren't great, because a lot of them, they are excellent, and we have excellent people and administrators and teachers in there. But again, it's what we have to remember, and even as a teacher, one of the first things they teach you, even becoming a teacher, is every kid is different, right? You have to differentiate instruction. And you said it again earlier today, is one size doesn't fit all, and what works for one family isn't going to work for another. And the needs at any given time can fluctuate. And just knowing you have an option, and it can be done. And a lot of people are doing it, and there's support for it. And you can find a lot of support from people like Rebecca, the Homeschool Cape Cod group, the South Shore group, all these great places. Gar says, certainly appreciate your time. Absolutely. And for everybody out there who's just going to be starting out on the homeschool journey, bless you. Good luck. You're going to be great. And like Rebecca said, there's going to be days that are going to be really tough. But that's parenting, right? That's parenting in general. And we're used to that, I've had a lot of tough days since March. We all have. But I like the idea of writing it down and putting it up somewhere and saying, okay, this is why I'm doing this. Just keep your mind focused on the end goal. Before we go, we have a few minutes left because I try to get done in under an hour. We're going to surprise someone with a random act of kindness, and this is one of my favorite parts, Becky. So we're going to call and surprise her, and I'm going to give her a prize if she answers. If not, we'll leave her a message. We're going to do this really quick. And this is one thing, I love this part because I love doing a little bit of joy, like something random.
Hello?
Hello, is this Elise?
Yes, this is her.
Hi, Elise. This is Amy from Cape Cod Moms, and I'm here with Becky, and we're on live right now on the Parent Pod discussing homeschool. But the reason I'm calling you is because your friend Kira nominated you for our show to receive a random act of kindness, and I just want to read you what she wrote real quick.
Okay.
She says she's a mom of 4 boys who loves well, laughs often, and is always available to lend an ear or hand to her friends and community. We love her, and she's our great friend.
That's really sweet.
So I just we wanted to surprise you, and after we get off, just text me your address, and we're going to get you a little gift out this week to you, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, Elise, and thank you for being such a great friend. We need more of that in the world, and it's such a blessing when we see it. So, thank you.
I love it. Thank you.
All right, have a good night.
You too.
All
Bye.
right, bye. It's like my favorite thing. Before we wrap up here, I just want to show you some thank yous. Shayna says, thank you so much for this helpful information. Great job, Becky.
Thanks, Shayna.
Diana says, thank you, ladies. I'm glad we brought you guys some information because I think it answered a lot of questions for a lot of people. Julie says, thank you for the information. Cassandra shared a link, valoronline.org, which is a Christian online homeschooling group. So if you're looking for a Christian-based homeschooling program, that can be a great option. I think you mentioned PACE earlier, which I know had their open house and a lot of great resources. Karen, this was very informative, and thank you. You're welcome, Karen. That's our goal every week. So if there's more topics, you guys, if you want Becky back on, you want to have more information about anything, just email us and we'll work on getting the people on here. We want to connect you guys. Erin, thank you, Becky. This is really good info.
Thanks.
Raquel says, parenting isn't for wimps. That's going to be my new tagline. That's right. That's right. And then she followed up with congratulations, Elise. Congrats. That's right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us today. If you have other questions, feel free to send them along. I can pass them along to Becky. If you have questions about getting involved with Classical Conversations or the group she heads up here and she coordinates and about starting a chapter, as she mentioned earlier, send me an email and I'll get you in touch with Becky so we can get that started. Any last words, Becky?
No, just thank you so much for having me on here. It was really a privilege to be able to speak to you all. And I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. Becky, just hang on because when this ends, hopefully it doesn't shut you out, but stay there. We'll chat for a minute.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody else. It was a pleasure. We'll see you next week. Next week's guest is Susan Shar, who was, her and Lori were the inspiration for even starting Cape Cod Moms about 10 years ago. She has now moved on to Monumental Beginnings Doula. She's a lactation consultant. She's my new mom guru. She's just my mom guru. I love her. So I'm really excited to be bringing her back on the show, and we're going to chat a little bit about new moms and how hard that is, especially during COVID. So join us next week. The week after, Tracy Lamperti, all about the year of the family dynamics. Kind of goes hand in hand with homeschooling and all these different topics, how important it is to have that strong family dynamic. And the week after that, I'm going to be coming to you live from a little regional vacation spot in a very low transmission area of Stowe, Vermont. Fingers crossed if our rates go back down. So stay tuned, submit your questions. We'll see y'all soon. Thanks so much, Becky, and everybody else. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.